There's a couple of pretty interesting things here that have been glossed over in most of the reporting, even in the press conferences that were held earlier today. So as a journalist, let me just say this. There is so much about this story that just seems off. It doesn't really make sense. So let me just lay the table here for a minute. So first of all, you have Colonial Pipeline that originally said that hackers from the dark side got into their systems. They then, not the hackers, but the CEO shut down operations to that pipeline, then decided to pay a $4.4 million ransom in Bitcoin. For what? So that the CEO could turn the pipeline back on and get them out of the billing system?
I made the decision to pay, and I made the decision to keep the information about the payment as confidential as possible. It was the hardest decision I've made in my 39 years in the energy industry, and I know how critical our pipeline is to the country.
Because that's exactly what happened. And now we know that the FBI, because they came in early, was able to claw back some of that Bitcoin. Of the 75 Bitcoin that were paid, about 63.7 Bitcoin were brought back. And why was that? Because it went to some kind of wallet that they were able to follow and trace through chain analysis, which is all true. You can absolutely do that.
Today we announced the seizure of millions of dollars in Bitcoin paid by an innocent victim in ransom in a bid to regain control of computer systems. The extortionists will never see this money.
The problem is, just because the FBI can identify which wallet and where it went to doesn't mean that you have access to it. The only way the FBI would have access is if they actually had the private key. Some of the reporting on this indicates that the FBI did, in fact, have the private key of the wallet that this Bitcoin was transferred to. How? That has not been explained so far. How is it that some of this, most of this, in fact, Bitcoin that went into this wallet, the FBI held the private key to it? Because just because you can find out where it is doesn't mean you can access it. So that part of the story has not been explained. Either the FBI had access to someone else's wallet, was able to access this key on some level through hacking of their own, which, again, most hackers aren't going to keep that on the private keys to their Bitcoin wallet online. They're not going to keep access to it that way. So how did the FBI get it? So if these private keys that were accessed by the FBI were not actually being held by the dark side hackers, instead it was being held by this third-party exchange like a Coinbase, that is what the Biden administration and other governments around the world will want, is to force all cryptocurrency into these kind of third-party exchanges where they can then access them with a warrant and be able to seize funds whenever they want to. That, I think, is going to be what we hear coming out of the G7 summit.